Hello, and welcome to the Evil Pig Month in Review for June 2022. I am joined here by our resident Radical Red, who is also now, I don't know what the title would be. The
It's well, I am active role and member of Evil Pig as really cool guy. Um,
That's his
yeah,
job title, really
I'm the
cool guy.
poster boy. I'm the guy that you see and you're like, I know that guy. That's the guy that works for Evil Pig, right? He's the cool one of the group, right? I'm the Sasuke,
Well, I mean,
right? So
you might know him as Shohei if you watch our
yeah,
D&D
yeah.
streams. Role models.
Yeah, please watch Role Models. I do play Shohei, the one-armed samurai. But let's dive right into some evil pig stuff. But yes, very happy to be a part of the team. Happy to be here. Podcasts are neat. I'm glad I got to guest star today. So fantastic.
So for news with Evil Pig, just going straight off into it, Primus Star still hard at work with that. We are actually almost done with all of the equipment for weaponry. I actually wanted to go over equipment with weaponry for Primus Star with Radical Red or Jim, as he might be known, or
Yeah.
Shohei.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jim, Shohei, Radical Red, it's all the same stuff, right?
Um, uh,
Mama.
Joed, Joe Mama is his new name. Resident cool guy.
um,
But yeah,
honestly, that's a really cool name to be named. So,
yeah. So Primus Star equipment almost done. I'm mainly focused on equipment right now, just because I've already gotten species all that down pat. I already know how that's gonna function. Classes, I feel like it's good. I'm still testing it. Speaking of which, Jim is also going to be testing Primus Star here in the near future. He's going to be playing
absolutely,
as a species known as the Lumen, which are
the cool guy
little.
species.
They are the cool guy species. You've heard it here from the resident cool guy. I would hope that he knows what cool guy is or cool things are.
Well, I got
Um,
my bachelor's in cool, so yeah.
yeah, of
Uh,
course,
yeah,
understandable.
exactly.
But the Lumen are made of dark matter, and it's a very interesting concept, especially with their backstory, how they seem to have come from a rift in space that brought their entire planet. They have no memory of what happened or anything, and
Yeah,
they're just beings that have been able to form, I guess, what they believe they would have looked like in dark matter and light.
yeah, absolutely. And while we're kind of on the subject, we've also, and I say we, but you've also done a lot of work just to in the last couple of weeks do a better balancing of the system, in which that's been huge just because of the fact that I have a feeling that things are gonna run better based off of combat and things like that. The role playing was never an issue, but
Yeah,
I am glad that we're moving forward with a little more rudimentary stuff because it makes it a little easier to understand and it does balance the game a little I would say more efficiently, right?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, the
Um,
changes that Jim is talking about here, he was also kind of after a test, a very short test. He was just like, okay, then here's my worries, and I took them into heart and I applied them to the game. It's a sort of AC system, armor class system, and
yeah,
uh, had to change all the weapons to be damage dice instead of what they were before. So we do have some classic aspects of other role playing games, but it has its own flavor in Primus Star, and I'm very excited for
right.
whenever it's actually released. And
I agree.
speaking of weaponry, there are so many different weapons.
Well, and that's
I
good. Like variety is essentially what we're looking for too. Like especially me as like a role player and playing a lot of tabletop RPGs.
yeah,
Which I will also kind of credit myself while we're here. Like I am extremely knowledgeable and experienced when it comes to tabletop RPGs, and so I don't want it to seem like I just came in here and I'm very inexperienced and I don't know what I'm doing, and I go, Jonathan, change your entire game, you know?
Well, it wasn't the entire game. It was
Right.
it was
Well,
an aspect
exactly.
that definitely needed to be changed. Definitely needed
Yeah.
some tweaking.
And so, kind of talking about the system prior, everything was based around a D20, and there was less of a necessity in combat to deal with the ups and downs of missing and hitting. It was all just very direct, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so it did like have a lot of flaws with say melee characters and whatnot, because those melee characters automatically taking damage was essentially what I was struggling with primarily, right?
Yeah.
But then as I delved deeper and I looked into the character sheet and I kind of remember the combat system, I start thinking to myself, M- perhaps like there is a step too far in trying to change the game a little bit, because the reason why a lot of tabletop RPGs are successful is because they stick to certain systems that are easy for the player to comprehend, and it's better for those role play interactions, right? So,
Definitely.
we look at like Vampire the Masquerade or 5e, or even some other games like Die, like all of those games have an AC like system, and they're all vastly different in other components and structures of role playing. But when it comes down to combat kind of does have like a right and wrong way to do it. Um, and so I feel like it wasn't exactly like we were, entirely wrong with where the combat was, but it definitely needed to step in that right direction, you know?
Oh yeah.
So I still feel like combat is extremely versatile and pretty unique just based on the world around it with Primus Star. Because more than anything, the strongest leg we have to stand on in Primus Star is the fact that you've done an amazing job world building, right? So
I have spent hours with it. Yes.
yeah, I mean,
Days,
you've put
I would
so
say.
much into this, and I mean, you've been planning, and since I remember meeting you, frankly, like you were almost done with Primus Star First Edition by the time that I had met you. In fact, I think that was the first tabletop game I had ever actually tried.
I believe
Um,
so. I believe so. Yeah.
yeah, it was. I played a Vadian brawler, and that was honestly such a good time. I had his name was literally Dat Boy.
I do remember that. I
Yeah,
do remember that. I remember that boy. That was fantastic. I also
yeah,
remember the main antagonist that I had you guys kind of go against was a sort of Rezer that had
yeah.
yeah, he
There was
was
like political controversy and shit going on, and
yeah.
like, oh yeah, it was really fantastic, and yeah, I like to like look back and reminisce on Primus
Yeah,
Star First
I do
Edition.
remember that. I remember it was an assassination, and then you guys were looking into it, but then apparently
Yeah,
you were looking into it a little bit too far. So then the people started to get worried, and they sent after a Rezer killbot to try and just get rid of you
yeah.
guys.
Yeah, and I mean, like that was the thing, is like Primastal First Edition was a lot more rudimentary, and it had a lot of those same components that you would see in games like 5e, but at the same time you had a vastly different world and how things cooperated and made sense, right?
Yeah.
Um so, like it wasn't a perfect tabletop game by any means,
Oh no,
um
no, definitely not.
but but I will say, like, there was the beginning of a really great idea, and I think that Primus Star Second Edition is gonna finally hit that stride, right?
Oh yeah.
So, um, I think the most important thing about Second Edition is really gonna be, kind of like two huge things, and I think it's gonna be clarity. So, like, it is clear what is happening, how to role play, how to go about interactions, and also the clarity of what it is like to play in this world, right? So you're gonna hate hearing this, but I think that you would need to actually write some books that are like, for example, like you have pre-written campaigns for 5e and like Die and games like Call of Cthulhu, right? So you
Yeah.
have these pre-written campaigns that really give you an understanding what it's like to be a DM. And so that's one thing I feel like we're really missing with Primus Star is the fact that you don't have that book that essentially tells somebody how to run your world, right?
Speaking on that, actually, Primus Star First Edition, we were originally going to release little campaign books and everything. Never
Yeah.
were able to really actually go forward with it. And before it was like, oh, you know what? I know a way to make Primus Star a bit better, and I started to do second edition. So
That's understandable, right? So like most importantly in the development of Evil Pig, right? Um our main goal should be releasing the best product that we can.
yeah,
And most importantly a finished product.
yeah. And I
You
released
see in
Primus Star
the
First Edition, and I was just like, I can make this so much better. And I
yeah,
decided, okay, it's gonna be a free game. You can just download it whenever you want to. But I'm
yeah.
gonna work on Primus Star Second Edition, and with that, I am going to be releasing all of the campaigns that I was originally going to release for Primus Star First Edition with Second Edition.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I mean I look forward to that. But this also kind of brings me on to another topic. But advertising, right? So um that's one thing that I am currently working toward. Um I am kind of taking the role of social media advisor, I guess you could call it.
Guru,
I suppose. Yeah.
consultant.
So I've only had it for about 3 days, granted, and I haven't had a lot of content
I've
to
actually
bring
been
up.
looking at it and everything. I
Yeah,
was looking at it today while I was busy with doing some other things, and I was like, oh look at him, look at all the stuff that he's
yeah.
doing.
And though we're not collecting a huge amount of followers and whatnot at the moment, it really is just kind of dropping your 2 cents in the bucket, right? So it's
Exactly.
you eventually drop 2 cents in a bucket, and eventually you'll have $1, right? So that being said, wow, that was a really good metaphor. I'm surprised, like I did that well, but here's the thing, especially with like Twitter, that's like my favorite interactive app, because if you can, get publicity will initially kind of get you out there, get you started, but to really get like a following, you have to have multiple viral tweets, right? Um, and so, really and truly, what I'm trying to do on Twitter is I'm not trying to get those viral tweets right now. I'm not like sharing an opinion for Evil Pig, first of all. I'm not going to be like, Evil Pig as a whole, as a company, feels like Vegeta would body Sasuke. It's true. But, like, I'm not going to go put that on the internet, you
Yeah, it's a
know?
very controversial opinion right there.
Yeah, exactly. So the the thing is, I'm not going to go and release a lot of stuff like that, but I do want to get to where I am interacting with the community. And whenever they do look at our page, they can look back and see that, like, hey, there is content, they are participating. This is somebody that I would want on my feed every day, right? So that's essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to become a part of someone's daily feed. They want to look at what we're posting, right? So you have to kind of get in the mind or the mindset of just like we're not on here to spread our message as much as we're trying to get on here and support other people similar to us and get them in our community, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be starting on a few of my days off some TikTok material, and I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited
Um,
for that one project that we were talking about for role models. The I don't know if you want me to actually reveal what you're going to be doing.
um, So, are you talking about the man? It's hard not to say. It's okay. We can say it. We can say it. I mean,
Okay,
it's
then
it's gonna be a work in progress.
yeah, it's not. I wouldn't really say it's an animation. It's like stills.
Yeah, exactly. But it's gonna
Yeah,
essentially be inserting characters and designs in place of like commentaries or successful audios because I mean, a lot of what happens on TikTok in the algorithm, right, is you have to be um, watchable. You have to hold their attention, right?
Yeah.
Because if they watch the first 5 seconds and swipe, you're not gonna have like the people who are seeing it are gonna start to decrease. You're gonna have less and less people seeing that video. But if you can hold their attention for multiple seconds and you can get them to watch the video multiple times. I know we spoke about this briefly
Yeah,
last time,
yeah. You were talking
but
about believe me, Jim, he knows a lot about social media, a lot more than I do.
well, yeah, and that's because I eventually know that in my career path and what I'm gonna eventually be doing, I've got to be able to market and advertise myself. So you have to learn what is successful in that industry. And so what the troubling part is right now for Evil Pig is we have a lot of content, little exposure, right? So if we can just get that exposure amped up, right? People will start following. We're creating interesting products. We're releasing content. Multiple times monthly. In fact, multiple times weekly. You're streaming. We're doing D&D every other week. We're releasing on YouTube. We're essentially putting ourselves in every branch. But the problem is we're not getting the audience, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what my initiative is right now, is start gathering a community that can then be applied into an audience. Um, but it's just really exciting to see the development and the stuff that we've got. I feel like our D&D sessions are, better than ever, especially with some of the developments that's happened over the storyline. Also check us out, Evil Pig Productions on Twitter, YouTube. Um watch Please watch the D&D streams because Role Models is everything you need. It's everything you want.
The developments from I want to say, was it 2 episodes ago? That
I
the one
so it
that
was
there was the episode that made all the party. It was like, okay, then we're an actual group now.
Yeah, like okay, no more being like I have no reason to like this person. Please like me. I'm doing so much. Um that was Shohei, not me. Um I
I'm sensing
I
like maybe that's not the full truth, but continue.
um yeah, so I will say, like D&D feels a lot better, even as a role player, because although like last session wasn't my session, right? Although I didn't
God,
do
poor
anything,
Shohei. Yeah,
it's all right. It happens. Scorpions come and attack you and your family,
they're
and it.
giant scorpions.
Yeah, I mean, God, watch us role models on YouTube. But
Yeah, I'm
I
actually working on that. I'm getting ready to like actually upload it, but I have to still go through all of the settings for it. So it's
Yeah, well, they
coming.
should start at episode 1 and binge until they catch up. That's what I do.
I mean, we're on episode
That's
11. I mean, it's not that many. It's less than a typical like one season of anime. So I mean,
yeah, but every episode of anime is 15 minutes. Every episode of this is nearly 3 hours.
okay, yeah, you got me there.
Um, if we really do the math here, there's a lot to catch up on. So,
So if we really do the
um,
math, we're looking at 33, about 33 hours of content to catch up on, roughly.
wow. Um, oh God, is it binge watch Critical Role or start One Piece? I recommend Critical Role. Still less hours. But I also recommend One Piece because it's really good. But I mean, 1,000 episodes. I'm gonna go find it myself at that point. But
For One Piece.
yeah, exactly. But I will say, like, although our sessions are long, um, I mean, we have content, right? It's not just every other moment we're going, yeah, and I tie my shoelaces, right? It is. there is
Invigorating
content.
role playing.
Yeah, exactly. God. Well, you'd be surprised at how much I see it, but the thing is, we're hitting our stride right now, and it feels really good. I feel like it's headed in a great direction. I have qualms with Shohei. We're battling right now. Um,
like
whether
mentally between character and player.
yeah, we're fucking fighting it out right now. Um, he he's an excellent character. I'm really invested in him, and I I love to role play him. But as I've expressed to you multiple times, like I do have my questions and my qualms, and it seems like every time I think about him, there's something else that's harder to to apply. Um, but that's part of the journey, right? And so I will say it does feel good to have to, like, it sucks when you have to hear, oh yeah, you can't do the thing you want to do in the future, but also this is D&D. Nothing is definite, nothing will happen, right?
Yeah.
You just see what happens every week and you get to the end, right?
And even
And
have
whether
some things
you
happen off camera.
yeah,
But
exactly.
we'll explore that next time
Yeah,
on Role
so we're
Models.
not we're not releasing that. Yeah, we role models next time is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be really good. So you know, hop the fuck in there. It's gonna be a good time. Um I I do feel like, yeah, with everything that's happening in role models right now, like things are only getting better. Um I do want to speak on Goros. Like Goros in the beginning didn't have a lot of that depth and character started yet. And so I feel like Gil is really hitting his stride right now
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
rounding out Goros as a really great character. And like I was saying earlier, even though last session wasn't my session, it was still really nice to see that, like, when I got hurt, oh, this is really conceited, but when I got hurt, people were concerned. Like if that would have happened prior, to us all having that heart to heart, or that situation happen, it probably would have been a little more like, oh fuck, he got hurt again. What a little bitch kind of feel. But fortunately, this time it was like and so like people also like showed through actions, not words, right? And so Lucinda Pearl like ran up to me really urgently as soon as I got hurt,
Yeah.
and began healing me. It was really really awesome about that. And had a really like and that's another thing. So I want to finish this thought first, but um Lucinda Pearl really did a great job of showing Shohei, like, I fucking care about you, you know? Um and that was fantastic. And I understand that she would have done that for anybody in the party just playing her role, but it was
Oh yeah.
just the urgency that Lucinda Pearl showed even when confronted with an adversary, taking that opportunity attack, even though it meant taking a little more damage. That related right back to, me surviving another round. It wasn't much, but it was at least another round, and I appreciated that. And Laura also did the same thing, right? So, um, and another thing was, Laura taking that other scorpion away from me, getting that second
Yeah, which was
scorpion.
very surprising with her animal handling. She does not
Yeah,
have
that
a good
was
animal handling. I mean,
no,
she's
but she crit,
horrible at
and
it.
that was fantastic. I mean, really 10 out of 10. So, um, that's why whenever like Shohei, and this was my second point, that's why like whenever Shohei like came to, it was immediately gratitude, right? Towards Lucinda Pearl and Laura. Um, because I mean, he knew like without them, he was fucking done, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, it was just like I mean, like Goros was fighting and really getting in his stride. But it was also really cool to see that Goro saw me go down and then, went into rage and actually started doing a lot of badass stuff. So, I mean, it really just, like nail in the coffin that Shohei and Goros do have a really great connection. Um, I feel like I have a really great connection with Goros, almost as if we're like the two little brothers of the party that are constantly trying to learn and develop. And so I will say, like, out of everyone, we're probably having the quickest character development, which is a good thing, right? Because we were the most immature.
I would say that, yeah,
Um,
you definitely are having the quickest character development so far right now. You and
yeah,
Goros both.
yeah, and I mean, it's also just the fact that like we haven't touched on a lot that the others would necessarily, have to have that development for. I've really appreciated the development between Laura and Luciferil. Those two characters kind of like linking up made sense.
Yeah.
They're both,
They're they're both from the
well,
same city. They both have the same
yeah,
hometown.
same
Um,
hometown. They're both intelligent.
Similar upbringings.
Yeah, exactly. So, you look at that and that's really great. And then of course Goros and I with our like, like we don't think we act, right?
Yeah, you're both warriors.
Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of match on that note, but also on another note, it's the feeling of, we're both very different in this place. And so kind of being able to stick together just feels like you're not so alone, you know?
Yeah.
Um but then it became about like Goros was like, "Hey, I'm gonna read," and that's whenever I made the character decision. I didn't want to make it to where I was like, and also, at the same time, I learned to read. I saw Goros go pick up books, right? And Shohei was like, "Fuck, that's awesome! I'm gonna go do the same shit. Let's do this together," right? He was like, "If you're gonna take the initiative to do it, so will I." And so it was almost like a promise, being like, "Hey, like you're not gonna do this alone, and we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna do it, right?"
Yeah.
Um, and so, that eventually branched over to Laura, kind of tutoring us and creating materials for us. So I just feel like the group itself is getting more tight knit and showing more the softer sides of each other and that
Definitely have more
capability.
emotions between all of you now.
Yeah, exactly. And I say like the whole role of being the little brothers in the group, and it's kind of like we get treated like it too, right? Because we are irresponsible, and we, like I said, we're creatures of action.
Yeah.
So we're not always going to be on the same wavelength, right? Uh, so that being said, I feel like just because we're not on that same wavelength doesn't mean that they don't still have that connection, though.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so yeah, I'm just really appreciative of the development that we had. Um, that conversation did whenever it happened. I haven't filled you in on this, but whenever I was bringing it up and talking, like just kind of starting the interaction, right?
Yeah.
I did not expect any of them to react a single bit how they reacted.
Yeah, I was
Like,
worried. I was worried, like, come on, please react. And then everyone was just like, they did. They
yeah,
did.
I mean, and it wasn't how I imagined at all. It was not a very like soft, deep moment, but it was a conversation, and it got us to the point we needed to get to.
Definitely the conversation between Luciferil and Laura. That was
Yeah,
just like,
yeah. I mean, whoa, talk
oh,
about
okay.
fucking. You could cut the air in the room with a knife. Like, that was the tension. And like, Shohei got really uncomfortable. I mean, he can't read a room well, but he can understand that,
I
you
knew it was
know?
going to happen at some point. I didn't know it was going to be right there, but I knew that Laura was going to talk to Luciferil about that because, yeah, I mean, of course I know all of your backstories, but I didn't know it was going to
Right.
be right at that point.
Well, I mean, like, what better opportunity, though?
Yeah,
Like,
I know. It
when,
made sense afterwards. Like, of course she would bring it up right here. This is like the heart to heart moment.
yeah, well, and what I really liked about that conversation was I initiated it on two things, right? I was like, we need to have a trust and two, like friendship, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're never gonna get anywhere was kind of his point. Like, I can go get on a boat, and go try this elsewhere, right? But you know, if we get somewhere and we finally start trying to understand each other, then there's no reason to get on that fucking boat, right?
Exactly.
So you know, I like that we opened up about trust, and then we actually had the conflict of trust. Like Laura doesn't at that point didn't trust Lucinda Prill, you know, like was kind of always around her and whatnot, but was having her issues, you know.
Hmm.
And then it really just opened up that moment. It really just hit a tender part for Laura and Lucinda Prill, and so that had to happen, right? I
Yeah.
do feel like that conversation was interrupted by me and Goros a little much. Um, but at the same time, they got around to the point. And you know, I remember very distinctly, like I had said, like I've been trying so hard to make you my friends, and the one person who spoke out and said, and you have succeeded, was Goros.
Yep.
And like I keep saying, like I don't want to like Gil listen to this and be like, "Whoa, Jim, you're being weird." I like at the same time, I enjoy whenever I have somebody in a campaign that I can really connect with, and Goros is really opening up to Shohei as a good friend. Like we've cuddled before. It's deep, you know. Um, so, and then also at the very end, I was like, I trust you guys. Do you trust me? And I got a confirmation, like, you do trust me. Okay, then, like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so, as a role player in that moment, like, there was a lot of adrenaline because of the fucking tension. Um, and so, I feel like not just me, but everyone was kind of like speaking fast and trying to shove out 1,000 words at once, except for Lucinda Pearl and Hammond, right?
Yeah.
Hammond was trying to push out all of the words at once, but it was definitely not 1,000. It was just like, I'm a fucking pirate, okay? Like, don't like this is my sharing. Now leave me alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Which,
definitely Hammond. I mean, it's his
yeah,
character.
exactly. And like Shohei understands that at this point. Like, hey, at least I got something out of him, right? That was the whole
Yeah.
point, and he succeeded. Um, and so I'm really glad also to see that like in a moment where Shohei wasn't there, there was still that connection and that urgency. Of course we didn't have Shotgun Buddy there at the moment.
Yeah. Sadly, Hammond was not
Um,
able to be there for that
yeah.
session, but
Um, and
should be
but
there next session, hopefully.
yeah, but the main thing that I'm seeing more of is again that urgency when someone else is in danger, and it wasn't just me in that encounter that got that special treatment either. Um, you know, uh, Laura immediately rushed to help and tried to do her best to help Lucinda Pearl, right? And
Hmm.
and so like that was great, and she also like not only did it get that other scorpion off of me, but it also divided it off of Lucinda Pearl and kept her from getting flanked. And so it was
Yes.
really smart of Laura to go and put her back against a wall, because then there's no flanking involved. There's not another scorpion that's going to run up and be able to take that spot, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Laura was like, honestly, like strategically, that was a 10 out of 10, especially being a caster. Because now, if that thing is moving toward you, even if it gets to you quickly, right, you still have the ability to cast.
Yeah.
So like, and I think that was like super crucial. I know she got grappled, but she still did really great with her rolls and caused a lot of damage, and that was fucking awesome. Um, but I think just overall we're becoming a stronger group, and um, I'm just hoping we don't run into giant scorpions anytime soon.
Again.
Just ever again, frankly. Uh, yeah, that was. I think Shohei is gonna develop a fear of arachnids based off of this.
I mean,
Um,
it was a pretty scary experience just in the middle of the
I
night
got to see
being
their little
woken up.
gross faces too. I like, and they were going. And that, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to look at that and not be horrified? Like, that's probably why I got fucked up. I was too scared.
And then, not to
Look at me
mention,
with little
especially
beady
being
eyes.
carried around, well, carried like away from your friends, kind of dazing in and out of consciousness, and just
Yeah.
seeing the eyes up close. And not to mention, it would probably be like some kind of saliva forming at their mandibles, getting ready to eat. So you got that whole
Nasty.
experience.
um, that's very nasty. I'm super glad I'm alive. Um, wow. Uh, okay. So my concern is right,
Hmm.
and I've voiced this, but Shohei has an incredibly low AC,
Yep.
and I'm
Yep.
slowly finding ways to slowly bump that up or make that better in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
But all of the things that better benefit AC um, come through class abilities and like archetype, little gifts in there.
Yeah.
Those are the main things that supply extra AC. Now, granted, you can find a magic item. You can, you know, uh, use a spell, right? But say you lose that item or you're out of spell slots, then what? You know. Um, so the, I really do have to find a way to combat constantly being health drained. You know.
Yeah, it
Um,
would just primarily just be increasing innate abilities through feats or through increasing your stats on level up.
yeah, in which I've got some plans for that, but here's the so that's like the conundrum, right? Is
Okay.
like, um, if I have to do my like stat upgrade, which would be cool. Like, oh yeah, sweet, take my dex and bump that up and get a better modifier. Fantastic, great. I'm already getting more AC, right?
Hmm.
Um, but then there's also the fact that like, I do that, but I can't get a feat, and that feat might be something that's necessary for something else down the line, you know.
Yeah, that is
So
true.
and so like those slots are super vital and important for Shohei, right? And I'm not going to give anything away, but he's definitely going to multi-class. Um, and that being said, he's weighing out his options, but the fortunate thing about fighter is that you can get those extra level ups, right? Or not level ups, but you gain stats or a feat or a martial archetype, right?
Yeah, more often than the others.
Exactly. And that's great because that supplies a lot, and really and truly to get my full value out of it, I would kick fighter all the way up to level 8, right? Cuz then I ultimately get the most upgrades and or feats or whatever I need in that 8 level span of time, and then also accompanying that I would have like my extra attack and some things upgraded that would be beneficial. But if I try to say just do 6 levels to um, get that feat or whatever, then if I multi-class, I have to wait another 4 levels to get another upgrade, right? So it's like that trade-off is severe.
Yeah, that's just one of those
Um,
things where it's just like, I can do this or I can opt for this, but then at the end of the day, it's gonna all depend on how you actually have your character in the at the end game. So I
yeah.
mean,
Um,
yeah,
because I mean that's when you're out of everything, right?
yep,
You've allocated all of your stats, you've chosen all your abilities. This is the best you'll ever get. And my fear is just that Shohei is already kind of plateauing, and I need to find ways around that because it is certainly intimidating to have like our cleric be able to do every role on our party. Like heal, tank, and then also like spectral weapon and the amount of damage she can do is really awesome, you know. And
Yeah.
so it kind of makes me as like the other DPS in the group feel as though I'm kind of lackluster. Um and you know, Goros has like his rage abilities and those are awesome. And it's
Especially
great for
with the
role
amount of
play.
damage that he took, and it was just like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
it was
just now got me
nothing.
down to 30.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's super convenient. And so like if that just means that Shohei needs to be more of a flighty, less, you know, headstrong fighter, which I think he could, you know, like he probably just assumed that role trying to be courageous and help his friends and keep danger away from them. But perhaps that tactician in his brain is starting to understand that maybe I do need to become a support DPS, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so I, you know, and I'm definitely willing to step into that arena. But at the same time, uh, even looking at my maximum damage that I can do on a hit, right? Um, I have +4 in strength, and so maximum in a turn if I action surge and get maximum there as well. Um, and then say, well, that's really it. So I can do 16 damage maximum in a turn, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Lucinipril doesn't have to expend a lot of actions or anything really extra after she's used like spectral weapon and then she's already on par with me, you know. I spent most of my fucking valuables, all my little special abilities and whatnot right then and there, you know.
Yeah.
Um so and I kind of blame taking Magic Initiate. I wanted it for role playing um, reasons, but I might have goofed a little bit there because it.
I won't really say. I feel like Shohei with Magic Initiate, it made sense narratively
Yeah,
with everything that happened, and I feel like it's still a very good thing, especially with what's going to be happening next session based off of what happened out of session.
yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure, and I I can probably understand where a lot of the strength in that comes from because if I can continue to do that, right? Say if I multi-class in something that has spells and abilities, you know, I will have, you know, support. Trying not to spoil right now.
yeah.
But
Let's just not talk about it.
yeah, what are you talking about? Who's Shohei?
Who? What
But
is Shohei?
you know, but like I keep forgetting that we have these spectacular magic items, right? And I don't think we've had a lot of reason to use some of them. But when I think about it, I'm like even now I'm carrying like 12 pounds worth of food, right?
Yeah.
Why haven't I put that in the bag of holding? um Uh, and like, of course, I keep the mask on me at all times. And I forget. So if Laura puts on the mask, she can see what I put on my face, right?
It is whoever is wearing the silver mask can see through the eyes of the gold mask, but the gold mask still sees just normally.
Okay. Um, so we need to switch. I keep forgetting. Um, but I okay, and then we have. I feel like we have another magic item.
The shield,
The
listen to
shield.
Pearl's shield. She actually got with me after the session. She's like, I could have used the shield, but I forgot about it. So
Yeah.
she's also forgetting about the magic items. She's still getting used to it. So you're
Right.
not the
And
only one.
well, I mean, we have 2 week breaks. It's kind of hard to remember all the details and know exactly, like remember exactly the the tools that you have on you.
Yeah.
Um,
completely understandable with that.
Yeah. Um, I think that with the magic items we have, the bag of holding is really the most useful one because I mean a lot of the game is looting and finding stuff. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I don't feel like the masks have had any utility quite yet. What I'm thinking about is using them at a later point for something that's probably not even pertaining to the party. I feel like there's a lot of ways that I could actually use that might be better. Um, so I mean, we'll kind of see. Like I have a few ideas of how that might can work, but we have I forgot what the other magic item was.
All I know about really is the masks, the shield, the bag of holding.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to figure out what's going on with those meteorites.
the meteorite chunks. Can it
Yeah,
not just be meteorite? I mean,
I
you
guess.
haven't really looked at it or anything, but I mean, it could just be meteorite.
Okay, but it's D&D, John.
Oh, okay.
um,
My bad. I'm sorry.
yeah, everything has to be magical. I well, and that's the thing is like if I could like have a weapon or like, well, that's just the thing, right? So like Shohei is always jumping for that next thing that can make him stronger. Like he's always on that self improvement grind. Um,
Always on the grind.
exactly. But even with all that hustle effort, he hasn't really found anything that makes him necessarily stronger. So I mean, this is kind of like a revelation to him in his mind like, "Oh shit, something fell out of the sky. Maybe this can be useful." Like it's not just sent from the sky for no reason, right?
Yeah.
That's not what he thinks. Or that's what he thinks, right? So with his limited knowledge and everything, that this is really just an opportunity for him, and uh, I feel like Goros also feels like this is an opportunity, and I know that Hammond would most likely see this as some sort of money making opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I
Um,
mean, he wasn't there, but I'm sure that if he was there, he would be like, "Oh, we have to collect this
yeah,
entire meteor. This can be
yeah,
money."
yeah, exactly, and so, I think it's gonna have some sort of utility, you know. I don't think we're just gonna end up carrying around meteorite for the next 16 levels.
Yeah. No, probably not.
Um, but who knows? Maybe it's just like everyone gets one and we're like, this is special, we remember it, and that's it. Um, I
I
don't
mean, I don't really see that being the case. I feel like if anything, it's iron rich, so if anything, you might just sell it for alloy, or there might be
yeah.
something else that you discover with it, or just money.
Yeah. Well, and okay. Um, with like with our group, right? We have a lot of different perspectives and states of mind, and so I think that being said, with the different takes that we could put on it, I'm sure there would be a way to spin it into something useful, or if not, like just yeah, like make a good amount of money on it. But I think as far as just like random events happening and being able to collect materials, that's essentially going to be the mindset of this entire group because of the fact that we're all looking for something, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so I I feel like those little moments are important just because of the fact that like it may not directly pertain to the plot, um, but it initially creates like opportunities for something other than continuously pushing the plot.
definitely.
And using time more wisely than being like, for example, we could be like, "Hey, come check out this meteor. Is it worth anything? Get some money and or get something very nice." Or, we could go and shoe shop again. Not that that was necessarily a bad thing, but
Laura needed new shoes. She was tired of
she
walking around in heels.
I don't blame her. That girl got blisters on blisters. But um, I feel like they're moments of significance more than just the average role playing, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a viewer, I'm more excited to see like, hey, they found a meteorite. Like, hey, that is gonna be something, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just us being like, I want to walk through a town and buy stuff. You know,
Yeah.
um, it
And there's
definitely
always
like
those
would
shopping
intrigue me.
episodes.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta have those little slice of lives. It's all filler, you know. Uh,
Exactly.
I I really enjoyed the session last session, and I know that like perhaps if I was not the optimistic king I am today, I probably would have been upset with how things went. But really and truly, I'm not upset. Like, I rolled poorly. They rolled extremely well. It was unfortunate, but it happens. But I had a good time with the group and
Yeah.
seeing like how everything turned out, and like us walking through the desert was a good time. I had a very good time with that. I'm learning how to read. There's a lot of progression there. Um, one of these days I will read on a fourth grade level.
One of these
Um,
days, Shohei will actually read, or Jim will read on a fourth
yeah,
grade
I
level. I don't know
mean,
which one we're talking about here.
yeah, I
Just
mean,
went silent.
yeah, I mean, if you just want to call me out like that, I mean,
I mean, the way that you said it, it was just like one of these days I will read on a fourth grade level.
yeah,
I
well,
get
one
you're
of
talking
these
about
days,
Shohei.
Shohei, yes, but that's I don't know if that's attainable for me, but um, we gotta be real. But I am super happy with D&D, and like the progression with stuff in Evil Pig, I feel like is gonna get a lot cleaner and a lot more efficient.
And like you were
You
saying
know,
before, the one thing that you brought up with Evil Pig, we just want to release the best product that we can, and I agree with that completely. Going back to that, I
yeah,
actually had a few podcasts back. We were talking about, hey, mistakes were made with some of these things, and I talked about Primus Star First Edition. I know that you really
yeah,
like it. I know that several other people really like it. I personally, I'm just like, I could do so much better. And that's why I started our second edition. And I basically was just like, okay, first edition is free. Sorry that we didn't release any of the campaigns or anything else with that. But I know for a fact that I can do a lot better. This was my first dipped toe in the role playing creation field, or just really in the entire game industry field. That was my first little go to, and I'm just like, I can do better. I know
yeah.
everything that I can do now, and Primal Star Second Edition is showing that so far. And speaking of that, whenever you brought up the whole, hey, I just basically spent the end game with the character for D&D. How I was like, okay, then I can't improve this. This is as best as I'm gonna. This is as good as I'm gonna get for my
Yeah.
character. I looked into that because I was just like, okay, then well, let's see the like what you start out and what you'll end at for skills, because Primus Star Second Edition is all based off of skill levels and growing your
Yeah.
skills in general. So I know that you made your character, and I know that you know of the tier system with wealth, the energy bonus,
Yeah.
luck bonus. One thing that I was looking at was the skill start, and how it's just like, okay, then you can start. I changed it, by the way, to 5 to 9, and then I looked at it. Sometimes, a lot of the time, if you want actually more specific growth, you might actually just want to stick with 5 for the skill level start. Because if you choose 9, you might be a jack of all trades, but you're not going to be like a master of very many. But if
Okay.
you chose the lower skill and not really starting out very high in all of them, you will be able to become a master in more variety of skills. So that's one thing that I noticed with the
Right.
game.
So like one thing that I think is really important is whenever I looked at the game, right, it seemed like you got really engrossed in the mechanics, right? And so you're like, I have to make everything work,
Guilty
right?
pleasure, yeah.
Yeah, so but I think like the really beneficial thing now is w- whenever you make a game of any type, right? You have to put yourself in the shoes of your audience.
Oh yeah.
And just like we were talking about programming, right? You have to tell the program what is pants, what are arms, how
This
do
is
you
this was
pull
a
up your pants?
conversation that we had off the podcast, by the way, guys. We
Yeah.
were talking about, okay, to explain to a computer, it's like, okay, then I want you to pull up your pants. First, you have to explain to the computer what pants are. Not to mention, you'll probably also have to explain to them what gravity is. But yeah,
So you have to basically walk them through the entire thing.
yeah,
And that's really what I mean. It's not to say that like people who play tabletop games are dumb, but it's anybody who wants to say like pick up your game or they don't know a lot about it or they've only played role-playing games that are maybe a little different from like 5e or like Vampire the Masquerade or Call of Cthulhu. You know, like some of these are vastly different, but you know, they might have started with something completely obscure, right? So they don't
hmm
understand a lot about tabletop RPGs. And so if they try to pick up your game, you know, it's got to be able to be understood by someone who has no idea what they're looking at, right?
exactly, yeah.
And so I feel like with a lot of what we've done and the changes we've made in the game, we've essentially set ourselves up for success because simplifying things is not a bad thing. Simplifying things means that you get to your point easier, right?
And
And
bringing up
so,
simplifying things, I will say before, like we were talking about with it, we had it so it was all D20 that you rolled for
yes.
everything, and then it was brought up as like it. In my mind, that's simple. I mean, technically, it is simple. Just one dice that you have to worry about, but
Right.
it
Like
still makes it so that it's
unbalanced and chaotic.
it, yeah. The chaos brings a complexity that's like, okay, well, it's a
Yeah.
little bit too complex now.
Yeah.
Making it more complex made it simpler.
Exactly. And that's why, like, being in your shoes, right? So the designer and the developer, and even the writer, right? So you're doing a lot of the jobs on your own, right?
I am doing everything on my own. Primus Star is
Well,
just me
exactly.
for right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're basically holding a job that most times is split up within a company, you know, so you can create one cohesive product and do it efficiently and get it out there quickly, right?
hmm
You on the other hand are doing this all yourself, so that's the thing. You don't get like a fresh perception of something like this unless you're coming to me about it or what the case may be. um so, you know, you're not constantly handing this off and saying, okay, this is out of my hands. Somebody who knows what they're doing over here will take care of this and make it, you know, cohesive. Then we have a finished product.
Yeah. Nope.
So,
Don't get that.
yeah, exactly. So, with you doing all of this, right? Um, you know, it's easy to slip into what is easiest for you, right? So, like, if everything revolved around one dice, that would be simple,
hmm
right? But whenever you look from the numbers standpoint and from the player's standpoint, you're going, "Whoa, this is how does this make sense?" Right? And how is that fair? Right?
Yeah.
So, um, you know, making the switch, I feel like for someone who is just getting into the game, they'll understand. Like they can look up like what is a D8? What is a D4? And you can roll anything electronically now. I can go onto Google and be like, roll a D8, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that keeping everything kind of separated and a little more complex as far as the game goes actually makes it much simpler and easier for not just the player but also the DM,
Yeah.
right?
Speaking of that,
The
that's a whole nother thing that I would have to cover is enemies, but I'm not even there yet. I'm more focused on just getting the basic stuff done for players and just trying to
yeah,
get that down pat. So,
yeah, and like another thing is you've got to just completely round away all of your rules, right? So like I remember whenever we were going through classes, like we found a way to make things a lot simpler, a lot easier, explain something a little neater. Um and so because it's only you, right? You're going to have to do that a lot.
hmm and
You're
I
going to
have
have
been
to
doing it a lot.
yeah, and that's very very tedious work. Um so I I don't know. I think that the realistic expectation for Primus Star needs to be that we're going to work through the core rule book and get through with that. And then, what do you plan on doing next? Is it going to be like enemies or do you even know?
So for Primus Star Second Edition, what I plan for it is the core rulebook would be essentially the combination of the Dungeon Master's Guide. If we were to like talk about it with 5e standards, it would be the
Yeah,
combination of the Dungeon
absolutely.
Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and Monster Manual. It would be an
Okay.
all-in-one.
Um, the only thing I would be concerned about is the monster manual kind of deal being there because if you give players the accessibility to all enemies, right?
That is
Say
one
they've
concern that
either
I've had in the past. Yeah.
yeah, because then as the DM, whenever you're trying to like maybe lower some health, make like dumb down an enemy, but it was good for role playing purposes or whatever the case may be, you'll have that one player that's a stickler and it's like, no, 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 right? So like that's the thing that is going to be most troublesome, and that even kind of like sucks for having the Dungeon Master's Guide also kind of included in that because I've known a lot of role players who would look at the rules and whatnot and basically go and fact check everything the DM does. So
Yep.
it
Gotta
makes the
love those
job,
players.
God, yeah, but I mean, those those players are essentially what makes DMing difficult, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you could do is release the core handbook and then mash together Mule and the Dungeon Master's Guide kind of deal into one thing, you know,
Okay. I can
because
see
I
that.
think that would be the most efficient. And then also, if you think about it, you could even like, make the like I don't know, like essentially make the Dungeon Master's Guide and the monster manual that you're selling together a little more expensive than like the core rulebook, and you can actually take down the price of the
Well,
core
that's getting
rulebook
into the whole
finances.
finance
Right.
thing, and we're not even there yet. I mean, that's far in
Yeah,
the
I
future.
understand.
Another thing is, I don't know if I'm even going to basically have a uh, a game master's guide, is technically what you would call it for Primus Star. Is
Yeah,
if you look at the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide, it really just goes over world building concepts as well as
like role
maybe
playing.
yeah, some role playing stuff, traps and things like that. I
Yeah.
could make a star. I mean, it could work, but I don't have. I'm not really in that mindset right now. I guess I'm more in getting the basic rules out. I guess technically, so that's just what I'm working on with Primus Star Second Edition. So I guess technically, I was just working on the core rule book and then combining the monster manual with the player's handbook, but
Yeah.
at this point, I feel like yeah, I do agree with you where it should just be a separation between the player's handbook and the enemies.
Yeah.
So I
And
think that we'll go with that route.
yeah, I definitely think that's the best route, especially for people who want to DM.
And especially
Um,
with how large the book is getting now, there's a lot of information getting in there now. So,
yeah, and
yeah.
I mean, I guess like a better word for DM would be like game guide because that's like universal. But um, I think that with the developments that we've had, Primastar Second Edition, I do have a lot of hope that it's gonna outshine First Edition.
First edition. I mean,
Yeah.
if you ask me if Primal Star for second edition is going to be better than first edition, hands down, hands down, I
Right.
know it's going to be because I have grown.
um, yeah, and I have plans to design a tabletop RPG of my own, and a lot of that knowledge and stuff that I've gotten is from Primus Star and seeing like how game development looks. Um,
Yeah,
and so it is inspiring to see this kind of stuff and fully comprehend it. And I think that's also why I can you know do so well in a D&D campaign or setting or whatnot. It's essentially just knowing the game down to its bare bones. Um, but also, the role playing part is so important, and so that's why I'm really excited for Primus Star Second Edition because we can then play again. Like
yeah,
in getting to see like the role play side of it. I think is what everyone's really going to be looking. So when we release, we really should start a stream of a group
I would
to get
love to.
everything, yes, to get everybody together, get some exposure out there. So then, if people are interested in getting this core rule book and whatnot, they can see like, hey, this is what the world building is like. This is what DMing it is like, and it'll kind of help people see the mechanics so that it translates better as well.
Exactly, yeah. And I would love to do a session for Primus Star whenever we are ready for it. But it is gonna be a little while. I mean, I wouldn't say it's in alpha anymore. Very, very, very early beta. I would I would probably put it at right now.
Yeah, I mean, in very early beta, I mean, we're still playing around with the structure, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I
I
mean,
mean,
at
hell, it
that
might actually
point,
just be alpha. It might just be late alpha.
yeah, I think when it really comes to where we are in development, like we are very, probably yeah, late alpha, determining what our entire game is going to be built around. So we're kind of just building the skeleton of it right now, putting on piece by piece
Uh,
beamer
I
into
would say it's not even that. We already have the skeleton. It's mainly looking at the skeleton and being like, oh, that. I guess you could say that bone is fractured if we're using the skeleton analogy. It's like we have to replace that bone with something better.
or or actually how I see it is like I agree with you, but also kind of how I see it is also on the lines of like, okay, we're bending the joints, right? So like we're figuring out how the skeleton moves.
There we
Um
go. There we go.
yeah, we're figuring out the mechanical skill of the skeleton.
And
And
if
so
how far we can bend it before it breaks, and if we need to actually
yeah,
fix that.
exactly. So yeah, like, and the thing that I keep like noticing is like every time we work on it, it gets profoundly better. And I feel like we're not going to be stuck in this development for much longer. Um,
I'm hoping that soon it's going to actually get to that. Okay, in beta, and it's essentially just polishing, getting all that stuff done, and
yeah, and beta
yeah,
testing and seeing where that goes because I mean we tried alpha testing. Thank God we did. Um, I still think we need to do a few more
oh
like
yeah, no, we definitely
alpha
do.
1.1s and 1.2s because I mean, sheesh. Um, the
Oh,
first
okay,
time I
all
was
right.
like, there's probably not a way that you can play a melee character, and I don't mean that to like dog or be rude. I'm just saying like mechanically melee characters weren't possible. at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it is
And
nice
changes were
to.
made after that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And so like with the new like AC like system that we're throwing in the game, it really makes it to where melee people aren't immediately screwed by distance. There's they might be more evasive or get special abilities. Like I don't even know what you use to balance it, but I don't want to get
so
too.
yeah, it was AC drop range for ranged weapons. So if you're too far away, then you start to get a tank to. I believe it's not. I don't know if it's accuracy rolls or if it's damage. I believe it might be damage actually. That damage actually starts taking negatives the farther away you are. I would have to
Well,
look at
I
that though.
honestly, it would probably need to be both. Because, like, if you've ever tried to, like, I encourage you, if you really want to see what that's like, play PUBG. Because PUBG, if you shoot a gun at a long range, right, you have to
Hmm.
count for bullet drop. And if you're in a car, you have to account for bullet lag, right?
Yeah,
So, like those things are extremely important, and especially with like firearms. So, like, if you're making a game that has like advanced firearms, unlike, fantasy games that we see all the time, we have to take into account that, like, hey, maybe if you're this far away, you take a -1 to accuracy and you take a -2 to damage, right?
yeah,
Um, but that still being said, if you're shooting a 50 caliber shot, it's still going to hit the target and blow a fucking hole in it, you know? Um I think that the way that we've kind of taken steps towards um like accuracy and whatnot, I think that just ultimately makes the game more palatable,
yeah,
you know?
definitely.
So, like I'm just really happy with the strides we're making in it. It's been like really great to see that, like, as a developer, like you're open-minded, and that's like what it takes, to release something good is being open-minded, because a lot of the games that are dying in this industry, especially like tabletops, is because somebody hears your game, nah, like it's too wonky, it's jank, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah,
And they go, "Oh, well, I worked so hard on this mechanic," and it's like, okay, well, it's not about the mechanic; it's about the gameplay, right?
yeah.
Um,
And it's mainly
so
them not listening to people giving criticisms or anything like that. Yeah, it's always a
yeah,
bad idea not to listen to criticisms if you're trying to make something for an audience.
yeah, exactly. Like if you work really hard on sounding like Creed, and you go out and you don't sound like Creed, and people are like, "Why don't you try singing more like, deep throated, like you're trying to bring a little bit of like Jesus into it, and maybe you'll hit that stride." And then they go, "You don't think I'm bringing enough Jesus right now?" And then they get upset. And yeah, you're not gonna be a better Creed singer, Like it's the
Yeah,
same thing. You want to be a good Creed singer, Jonathan, and I admire that.
I don't know. um, uh, though with that, we are reaching our end to our podcast. I do have some announcements next month. Our resident Natalie Thompson will be returning as a programmer and will be working on Beat Drop with me. So that game should be looking to get a earlier release than I had planned. I mean, technically, I thought that the game would be released sooner, but a lot of stuff got in the way. But she's returning, so that's going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to work with her again. She was awesome to work with before with Feline Frontier. After, whenever we can, we'll look and see the possibilities for that though. But Natalie will be coming back to program with us. Promise Star will continue to see the love and care that I've been giving it for these past few months. Um, I am hoping that technically equipment should actually be done before the end of the month is up for June 2022. So, but on that note, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Evil Pig Month in Review for June 2022. And I will see you all next month, possibly
Bye.
with a returning Radical Red, or Jim, or Shohei, or Resident Cool Guy. But until
Thank
then,
you. I go by many names.
yes, many names. Well, until then, guys, thank you, and see you next time.